Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. Welcome to the official launch of the Africa Agribusiness Outlook report, which is a joint survey between Agra and KPMG. We would like to, welcome you to this inaugural event. And as you log into the platform, we would like to reassure you that in case we have any technical challenges, those will be handled by our IT team. It's also important to note that this particular session is being recorded, and in case of any technical issues, we have a very able team that will be able, to handle that. So again, we are really honored to have you on this particular launch of the inaugural Africa Agribusiness Outlook report. It is a survey of CEOs across sub-Saharan Africa, and as I said, it's a joint publication between Agra and KPMG. And we do hope that it's going to start a series of conversations with the private sector, innovators, change makers, but it will also give us very good insights, especially for government and development, partners, to have a very deep understanding of, some of the opportunities that the agribusiness sector is looking at, what are some of the key challenges they are facing, and how can we all work together, the private sector, the public sector, to be able to increase investments into African agriculture to bring about an inclusive agriculture transformation. So with us, we have a very, very powerful, very deep and broadly experienced team of speakers. I will introduce them in a very short while. And just to run through the list, in terms of our agenda, we'll have some opening remarks from Vanessa Adams, who is a Vice President for Strategic Partnerships at Agra. She has way over 20 years of deep experience in the agriculture sector on the continent, engaging both the private sector, public sector, and the development, sector. We also have with us the CEO and the managing partner for KPMG East Africa, who will also give us some opening remarks, and then after that we will have a presentation from Wamboi, who was the team leader of this particular assignment, and then once she has finished with the presentation, we will engage our panel just for some 15-20 minutes for them to provide us some insights. So with that, we really want to provide our appreciation and acknowledgement of the support that we have received from USAID and from the Piata partners, who have graciously provided the funding for this particular assignment, and we do want to acknowledge that that financial support. Now, and finally, as I'd said, this particular assignment was carried out by KPMG East Africa, and on the panel today, their CEO and managing partner, Benson Ndungu, will be leading that particular team, and we do appreciate the amount of work, the quality of insight that you have provided. So with that, I would like to welcome Vanessa to give her opening remarks.
Thank you, Valentine, and thank you all for joining us. It's a beautiful afternoon, actually, in Nairobi, for such an impressive and auspicious and very well-versed, diverse panel and speakers that we have with us, and really prestigious participants online as well. We are so proud and pleased to actually replicate what we saw that KPMG was doing in terms of a global outlook on agribusiness and some impressive reporting. And we said that we really want to have a spotlight on Africa. We want to be able to measure, if possible, the confidence level in Africa growing year on year, and particularly in the very challenging sector of agribusiness and food systems, which, as you all know, is really, of all the sectors for investment, the most in need and the most difficult in terms of years to payback and internal rate of returns and all the standard indicators that we're going to hear about. So with the challenges that we know so well and the appetite and need growing, especially in light of COVID and increased climate changes and pressures on the food insecurity throughout Africa, we all are firm believers that private sector has a tremendous role to play. And this report really was the opportunity to work together to draw out the voices of those who are operating throughout the continent, who are in day-to-day putting their brilliance, their minds, and their hopes to work, and working to increase and improve the livelihoods of smallholder farmers, of course, in so many countries. So we're extremely pleased with this initial report focusing on Africa and building on the deal room. And all of you were engaged at some level in the recent AGRF in Kigali. I was very pleased to be there myself. The excitement was palpable. The number of government presentations and the level of private sector engagement was the highest that we have seen to date. We had $7 billion worth of opportunities raised through government presentations and private sector engagement. We had over 1,000 SMEs participating online, and we really think that it's important that we continue to advocate and build the messaging together, so that all the governments who are really trying to support the sector, both in the OECD global north as well as throughout Africa, can really jointly respond to the true voice of the private sector. So this is a really phenomenal and exciting event and launch, and I look forward to hearing many comments and chats from all of you through the chat box throughout this engagement and going forward. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for those opening remarks. And audience, as she has noted, please post your questions in the chat and we'll be able to attend to them. As I said, this particular assignment is supported by our Partnership for Inclusive Transformation in Africa, PIATA, which is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation of Germany, the Rockefeller Foundation, UK Aid, and the United States Agency for International Development. We truly appreciate our donors. So Benson, as you do provide your remarks, I really take note that you have such an engaging role at KPMG, and as we have noted, your team did a very good job, and we truly appreciate the good work that you're doing. Please do give us your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Valentine. Good afternoon and good morning to all our members who are participating in this very exceptional forum. I must say, I'm very delighted that KPMG East Africa is partnering with Agra to, in particular, undertake this survey across the continent for a sector that is so critical to the growth and the aspirations of our African people and the continent in general. So as KPMG, for me, this is a delight, and to be making a contribution to have a view on how we take the agribusiness and the agri sector forward. We all know the critical role that the agribusiness plays in the transformation of our continent and in our economies. We do know, and we've heard from the CEOs across the continent on what their priorities are and how they see it. And I'm looking forward to get to hear the specifics. But if I look at the foundation that our continent has, the dynamics that we all experience across the agri sector, they vary across board. The opportunities that exist, as Vanessa has said, within the agri sector, they are enormous, both for the private sector and for government. When I look at the issues that we've come across, and I see across the agribusiness across board, the lack of financing, and not just financing, but suitable solutions, financing solutions. As KPMG, we have done many surveys before for the SME sector, and the SME sector is a critical element, a critical component and makeup of the agribusiness across the African continent. They are looking for solutions that will help them transform their businesses. They are looking for solutions that will help them do value addition, have access to market. So when you look at the infrastructure gap that we have across the continent, how can we help build that infrastructure that we can connect our people across the various geographies in the African continent? How do we ensure that we can bridge the gap that today, as we import majority of agribusiness products from the other continents, how can we find solutions and do intra-Africa trading? And we can only do that if we interconnect the continent, so that the 80% of what the products we import, we can have those solutions in Africa. COVID has taught us that we have solutions that we can have and implement locally, that we no longer have to be lagging behind. When you look at the intra-Africa trade today, which falls below the 15% mark, compared to the 60% that we see in Europe, intra-Europe trading. When we see the over 40–50% that we see in the North American continents, why can't we do that in Africa? Agribusiness lays the foundation for us to be able to grow our continent, provide the food and nutrition security that we so require for our people. And we know majority of these people live in the rural areas, and they depend on agriculture for their livelihoods. So for me, this is a very timely survey, and I do look forward to not only the private sector looking for opportunities, whether it is financing, whether it is technology. How can we apply technology in helping our farmers, and in this case, small-scale farmers, be able to undertake their business and have access to market through e-commerce, whether it is a private equity who are looking for sustainable projects. It is in the agri sector where we find those so-called sustainable projects that will help even address the question of the ESG and the solutions that we need that are climate friendly, but at the same time addressing the socio-economic disparities we have across the continent. So how can we get the governments to also be true and remain true to the Maputo Declaration, Maputo Protocol, that we can commit no less than 10% of our national budgets to promoting the growth of our agriculture sector. So these are the things that I'm looking forward to, and I'm hoping that this report will provide the platform that we can have the policymakers then have the interventions that we so require to grow this, and have a backbone that will provide our youth across the continent who have a median of, say, the 20 years of age, majority of whom live on this continent, jobs, and they can make a contribution to the growth of our economies. So it's a good platform to be in. We are delighted as KPMG. I'm delighted personally to be part of this journey, and I look forward to the engagement across this forum. So thank you very much. Valentine, over to you.
Thank you so much, Benson, and we truly appreciate the work of your team. The Rome-based agencies released a report a few years ago that estimated that we need roughly $180 billion or more annually to be able just to address the whole issue of food security. And so we do know that to bring about an agriculture transformation, an inclusive agriculture transformation, we need a lot of investment. 180 billion is just the baseline. So with that, I really want to ask, Wambui to give us the insights. What are the CEOs saying? How are we going to work together to increase investment on the continent? Because this is our time as Africa. We need to ensure that we have food security, our economies are growing, our farmers are making money, our agribusiness are making money. How are we going to get money into agriculture, Wambui?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Valentine. Thank you also to Vanessa and to my CEO, Benson, for your wonderful opening remarks. And what we are hoping is that through this survey and the discussion on the findings, that we will be able to answer some of the questions that you all have raised. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the KPMG team that I worked with, especially my technical team, just to let you know that they are all here. So Hugh Scott, Micheline Ntiru, Tabitha Njuna, Grace Njoroge, as well as engagement partner Anis. So if there are any questions, we will all be able to answer as a team. So when did we start this journey? We started this journey around Q4 of 2019, and KPMG had been engaging Agra for quite a while about doing this survey. As Vanessa said, we really wanted to translate what has been done at a global level to an Africa level and to really understand what is going on and what are the priorities for the agribusinesses in Africa as a whole. And no better partner for this than Agra, which has a continent-wide platform. Now we were just about getting ready to work and launch the survey towards the end of March and April when COVID hit. And you know, when we actually started preparing, COVID was it was something that was out there. It was not, personally, I did not even think that it would come to Africa. So when lockdown was initiated in very many African countries in March, we knew that we had to do something and we had to change and adjust very quickly to make sure that we get the right responses from the CEOs to really understand how exactly are they handling this particular period. So what you're going to see is a good mix of questions. We have a big picture questions that are very useful for policymakers as well as organizations such as Agra. How do you transform agriculture on the continent? What do businesses think? But also, you will also be able to see what are their priorities, and how are they addressing the COVID challenge. So just to give you a little bit of background and context, the main question, we had two questions that we sought to answer with this survey. The first and the primary question was, how can the private sector increase investment in agriculture? As you heard from Valentine, the challenge is huge and the need is huge, and no one institution can do it by itself. Not the government alone, not the donor agencies. We have to come together to pool our resources. And so the idea is, how can we get the private sector to increase their investment in the agricultural sector? The second question that we sought to answer was, how can Agra increase its engagement with the private sector in Africa? We know this is a key part of their strategy. They are now working on the strategy for the next 10 years, and we believe that this study is going to provide important inputs into it. We started with this year, we started with a small section of countries in terms of what we considered as primary focus countries. And the primary focus countries really refers to the countries where we did one-on-one interviews with various CEOs. And then the secondary focus is where we deployed the quantitative survey. And for the quantitative survey, we had about 71 questions. And I just want to put it out there that we were pleasantly surprised by the response by the agribusiness sector. Honestly, we didn't expect such high level of engagement, but people got onto their machines, they responded to calls, and they answered and gave us time, even during this Corona period. And part of me likes to think that maybe it was because they really wanted to get their voice heard and to say something, especially because times were really difficult. Now, we had a total of 182 respondents from 16 countries, and I'll walk you through what the distribution of what those countries looks like. But it's important to note that about 40% of the companies that were surveyed had been in operation for over 10 years. So I think that's pretty decent. And then because we were working across startups, high growth companies, SMEs, even micro to some extent, as well as the large multinationals, operating in Africa. 20% of those have been in operation for 3 years, less than 3 years. Now, this is really the heart of the survey, and I just want to draw your attention to this, which is really that we hope this survey is going to be the start of a series of conversations between the private sector within the agribusiness ecosystem in Africa. As Vanessa said, it's really important to keep a pulse and to provide a barometer of where exactly the agribusiness sector is going at going at any one particular moment in time, and that's what we hope to do through this survey, which we will be deploying on an annual basis going forward. I invite you also to post anything that is of interest to you in terms of the findings. We have a hashtag agribusiness report launch, and you can post on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn using this hashtag. So as I said, we had responses from 16 African countries, and you can see that the majority are really countries where agribusiness is also quite strong, and this has more to do with the quantitative data. Now, quantitative survey. The respondents came from across the ag different subsectors, with the majority coming from input supplies, processing, as well as production. We covered a range of companies, and if you use the World Bank's definition of SMEs, I would say that just about 40% of the companies that were surveyed, or a little over, were SMEs by the number of employees that they have, and also by their turnover profile. So that's really the distribution. Now, this is what we're calling the agenda for action. If we want to really understand what are the priorities for agribusinesses on the continent. And we had a list of 71 priority actions, and they were in about 10 or so chapters or buckets. And by far, access to finance was the dominant theme for businesses. And I think this is quite interesting, especially if you're understanding this from a policy perspective, because many times you don't tend to understand what it is exactly that businesses need. But we're going to tell you more about this. So first of all, the key buckets are finance. How can agribusinesses get access to finance? And it's not just a question of access, it is also, as you will see from priority number 3, that it is also a question of the cost of money. So here we have an issue of how do you finance companies directly? The other bucket is how do you increase the productivity of smallholder farmers? Whilst there is a huge debate that goes on about the role of smallholders as the continent continues to grow, I do not think that this is an area that can be ignored, and really whatever any business does and whatever anyone does, we have to include the smallholder in our work, and we have to make sure that they contribute to the growth of agri on the continent, as well as food security and nutrition. Now, the other big area for priority for agribusinesses is infrastructure. And this is particularly important for many countries who now have manufacturing as a priority. And I'm thinking of a country like Kenya. And when we spoke to companies, especially the food processors and the processing companies in countries like Nigeria, in countries like Zambia, in countries Tanzania as well, and Ghana, many of them said, they have to facilitate and create the infrastructure for themselves. And this is a huge cost and a huge burden for many companies, which they do not need to undertake. We believe that if infrastructure was provided, many companies would thrive just on their own. They don't need much more. Then technology. So technology is a big one. And it was not just technology. We've seen the growth of fintechs, for example, on the continent. But what we heard from the agribusinesses is that they want affordable technologies suited to Africa, deployed for them and deployed to them. And we have some really good examples who are featured in the report, such as Sun Culture, who provide irrigation systems powered by solar, that are in the report. And last but not least is the massive amount of investment that is required, and it's both by the public sector, so increased government spending on agriculture, as Benson said, as well as increased massively financing across value chains. So out of all the 71 priorities, we have picked the top 10, and if you were to say these are where we need to focus, I think we would be very good to go. Now, we also asked them a high level.
Well, you do have another 5 or so minutes. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just go through this and then I'll go to the recommendations. So the other big question, which is also very, very interesting for many of those who are in the audience and for Agra, our client, is what do businesses think it would take to transform agriculture on the continent? And I'm just going to highlight 2 which I thought were really, really interesting. So for example, provide last mile services in rural Africa, and many companies are struggling with this, and yet this is where also the gold for many companies is. And we believe that here as well, for this to happen, there is a role that technology plays. The other area to highlight is value addition in agriculture, as well as growing business beyond national borders. And many of the agribusinesses that we talked to have very, very big dreams. So a lot of the, I'll talk to this one slide and then move to the recommendations. So what did companies do and how did they respond to the COVID pandemic? What we found is that majority of them, actually a significant portion, actually say that they are going to leverage technology, and because it is critical to thriving and to surviving COVID, in addition to getting access to finance. The other area that we were pleasantly surprised by was that not many of them said they would actually shut down their companies or actually shut them down or even put investments on hold. But yes, because many of them suffered in terms of the amount of money that they were making and in terms of operations. We saw revenues decline massively and significantly, almost up to 80%. There was a huge reduction in operations. But this is really, it would be interesting to see if we did this survey now, how this would be in Q4 and Q1 of 2021. So I'm going to skip through technology as well as the areas that I've talked about and talk about what are our key recommendations. The first is obviously that there is an opportunity in COVID, in this COVID pandemic. So yes, it has been extremely, extremely challenging for many businesses, but what it also showed us is that very many businesses are also resilient. And because countries were forced to adapt and to look within themselves, many companies across the agribusiness value chain actually rose to the occasion and responded either by processing or manufacturing. And we believe that this is where there is a silver lining and there is an opportunity. And this is something that needs to be given huge attention. The other area of focus and recommendation is that we need a lot more innovative finance as solutions that are geared and tailored specifically to meet the needs of the agricultural sector and specifically even the companies that are operating in agriculture. So many times people have, organizations have declined to finance agribusiness because they think it has a lot to do with production. But we're saying that actually you can finance across the value chain, and if you take a value chain approach, then there is opportunity. innovate. The other area where we find there is opportunity is also in the area of food safety. And this has to do as well with processing, with manufacture, as well as with the safety of our nations and people. And so food safety emerged as a strong theme in terms of the priorities, and that makes a lot of sense given what is going on with the pandemic. The other area is there is an opportunity to transform agriculture with technology. And so we think that we would like to see a lot more companies deploy technology solutions for the agricultural sector and for the agricultural value chain. And if you're wondering how to engage young people in ag, this is where we've seen, even as a farm, that it's the easiest way to engage young people in agriculture. Engage them with technology, ask them to deploy solutions for technology, technology solutions for agriculture, and they will come up with ideas. There's the last 2 points, which are also really important from a business perspective, is that partnerships really, really matter. So we've seen that you need public-private partnerships to address all the massive challenges that are needed, whether it be finance, whether it be infrastructure, even whether it be food safety. You do need public-private partnerships to address this, and we think that the direction that Agra is going in this regard is also very is very important. And lastly, is that diversity is good for business. So during the survey, we heard a lot about many companies saying, yes, we are including and involving women in our supply chains, how we reach them, because yes, women are a core part of the smallholder finance. But within the organizations themselves, we were surprised when we asked that question, like, what is your plan for having women in senior management? What is your plan for having more diversity within your organization? And many CEOs actually were taken aback by the question, and they realized, oh my God, I don't have an answer to this question. It isn't actually something that I've thought about. And fine, it may be that many of the companies are small, but we do think, based on our findings, that there is always a link between a farm's profitability and diversity. And so we encourage businesses to embrace diversity because it's very good for business. So this is what the report looks like. It's available on the Agra website, and it will be available immediately for download. I believe it's available immediately now. So do go there and take a look and have a read, and karibu sana. Thank you, Valentine.
Well, thank you so much, Wamboi. That's you guys have done a great job. I mean, and as Wamboi has said, our mass communication team will be sharing the links on Twitter, on LinkedIn. But if you go to the Agra, website, you will be able to download the report, and we'll give you the link as the meeting, progresses. So thank you so much for those key insights. I do hope we've picked out quite a number of key messages. The details, of course, are within the report. So with that, I would like us to shift to our high-level, panel. Of course, we did interview and we did talk to a number of CEOs, but this particular afternoon or morning, depending on where you are, we've picked out some of our business leaders on the continent just to share some reflections on what has been presented, but also a view on what is keeping CEOs on the continent awake. So with us, we have a very high-level panel that includes Dr. Diane Karusisi, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Bank of Kigali, that is the largest commercial bank in Rwanda by assets. Dr. Karusisi has lots of experience. She has worked quite hard to grow and expand the Bank of Kigali group. They are now into general insurance, investment banking, technology. So quite a wide, portfolio. And to accompany her on the panel, we do have Ayodeji Bolagun, who is the CEO of Afex, that is a commodity exchange, company that is based out of Nigeria. He likes to call himself an emerging Afri-capitalist, loves art, and he's been over the past over 15-20 years, he's been developing West Africa's private sector-led commodity exchanges. And to accompany our two leading, CEOs, we also have Didi Noon Nelis. My apologies for pronouncing your name wrong. And she's the co-founder and managing partner of Sahel Consulting Agriculture and Nutrition Limited, with over 25 years of experience in international development, where she has worked both in the private sector, in the not-for-profit sector, and sits on a number of boards, including the the Agra board. So welcome to this particular high-level panel. Welcome, my panelists. So I'm going to pose just a few quick questions, just to pick your insights. Number one, just some quick reflections from what KPMG has presented today. Diane, what did you pick out that was quite compelling?
Thank you, Valentine, and thank you for having me on this panel. I think the report that we are launching today by KPMG on agribusiness, on the agribusiness outlook in Africa, is actually revealing many trends that were already existing before, and that the pandemic has exacerbated. So, across the value chain in food systems, from a smallholder farmer productivity to the logistics to processing, all the issues there are revealed in this report. And what is very important is that the report also gives us there's some action, there's some call to action. So what do we need to do? And this is something that I think we'll reflect on as we craft our strategies going forward.
No, thank you so much. Ayodeji, what stuck out for you?
An extremely timely report. So for me, the first thing that jumped to me is that 3 of the top 5 priorities of agri CEOs were around financing. And considering that the size of financing available to agribusinesses across Africa is merely 2% of the entire size of the sector. So it just buttresses the importance for us as players to really be able to find catalytic, local, scalable solutions around agricultural financing. That for me was the biggest.
No, thank you so much. Didi, I don't know what was the key highlight for you. Please do tell us.
Well, first I commend KPMG and Agra for convening this meeting and for the report. Clearly, agro-processing and the need for value addition jumped out at me. I am an SME agro-processor, but also work with lots of agro-processors, and the recognition that we are not doing enough value addition in our ecosystems and linking farmers to markets is glaring, and I was so happy that the report focused on this, as well as the focus on catalytic patience financing. Building on what Ayodeji said, it's not just financing, but it has to be catalytic, it has to be patient, it has to be tailored to the needs of the entrepreneurs. That was also very welcoming and something we've been talking about for a while. And finally, in the recommendations, of course, the gender recommendation and the need for inclusive agriculture and entire inclusive food ecosystem is one that resonates with me and one that I'm so happy they took on, especially in dealing with CEOs across the continent. So thank you for the report.
Yeah. So thank you so much. I mean, those are really, critical insights that have come out of this report. So Ayodeji, I know we've talked to CEOs, but I would like just to hear from you. Afex is doing such a good job in Nigeria. You're linking smallholder farmers to off-takers, but also to inputs. But I mean, it'd be nice to hear from you. What are your top 3, priorities? I know that there has been COVID. How is it impacting your strategy moving forward? So, just give us a quick insight, as a business. What are your key, priorities, and how is COVID, shaping your strategy moving forward?
Thank you very much. I think the story of agribusiness in Africa, particularly through COVID, and truly for all of Africans as a continent, Africa as a continent, is the story of resilience and adaptability. I think that's 2 key things that we've all shown, and I think it's going to be demanding of us as we, over the next decade, try to transform agriculture and the economy of the continent primarily. So for us, when I think of this year, I think of a year that prepares us for the next decade, that despite all odds, we shall succeed. When we look at AFEX and we look at what it becomes, so the first thing that COVID taught us to really look at is the importance of your extended perimeter for doing business. When you look at your inward and your outward supply chains, how well integrated are you with the next SME that works with you and the SME that works with them? So for us, it's the farmers we work with, and then sometimes even when we work with traders and merchants in the market, how well are they integrated with the people that supply to them? And for the feed mills that we also supply or the food processing plants, how well are we aligned and integrated such that through the entire pandemic, we're able to continue to provide just-in-time delivery of inventory for them based on inventory that they've purchased. Second is the importance of technology as a critical driver for agriculture operations. Data becomes extremely important. So when the whole pandemic came, we knew for sure that prices will become a problem. The problem is, what volume of food do we have? What volume of commodities do we have? When will prices start to become a problem? And how can players start to react? How can we inform policymakers to ensure that they were not too reactionary, but they could actually plan appropriately and intervene correctly? And this is one of those things that we've seen in our work and in some of the work that Agra is also leading across West Africa currently. And Sahel Consulting also does a great job around yesterday evening, we want to call around rice sector. Data is a big issue. And one of the things we've seen is that a lot of private companies are actually aggregating a lot of data. Now, because this is very fragmented, it's not very useful when we look at the big data that can help us drive the agenda in Africa. So one of the things that we need to start thinking forward is that it's not going to be just the development partners or government that will have to deal with data. We all have to really do it and standardize our processes of capturing data. The last one is around financing. It's critical that we have to really look at how to create scalable, inclusive tools to drive financing. So we're very heavy currently on asset-backed financing models, either using repo transactions or using asset-backed commercial paper. So currently, we're driving to help a number of agri-SMEs that are on our processing side now to unlock financing from the capital markets using commercial paper structures. And those commercial papers are backed by warehouse receipts. So even though the company's balance sheet may not meet investment grade to issue a commercial paper, by the time you wrap it around with a warehouse receipts are listed on the commodities exchange, it increases the rating significantly. So these are the three things that for us we are looking at for the short term and how we will play as FX.
No, thank you, Yodij. No wonder I'm not surprised that agriculture has been spared in this COVID time. Just looking at the work that you are doing in Nigeria, I'm sure that cuts across all the other agribusiness companies on the continent. So Diane, I know you're a bank, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but for sure we need more investment into agriculture, especially investment by the private sector, even as we hold our governments accountable to increase their budget allocation to 10%. But I would like to hear your view on how we're going to drive more investment into agriculture, and where do you see opportunities yourselves as a bank, but also, as a private sector on the continent. Diane.
Thank you, Valentine, for the question and for putting me on the spot. And I really believe that for us to boost agriculture on the continent, we need all our initiatives and to center on the farmer. And who is the farmer in Africa? Who is the farmer in Rwanda? The farmer typically is a smallholder farmer. I'm talking about Rwanda, with on average 0.5 hectare of land, and who has this level of education, primary, post-primary, for some, and some of them actually not even full primary. So how do we focus on this person, and how do we provide the support needed for this person to thrive? Because I believe ultimately, when we're talking about agriculture and we're talking about the food systems, if we don't have surplus, production surplus by smallholder farmers, there's no way we can have trade, we can have value addition, we can have food processing, etc. So we really need to focus all our efforts on productivity for smallholder farmers. Now, how do we do that? And I think now, we've spoken about digital technology that has enabled us actually to have even this conference and to do so many things, to work remotely. But we have all the technologies actually available to support this farmer who has a phone, a feature phone, and to help him, drive his small business, with advice on the best practices, on financing, to provide the right financing for seeds, for fertilizers, and to support him to boost his business. I believe if we all, as stakeholders, banks, governments, NGOs, all stakeholders focus on the farmer, I think we'll be able to unleash a lot of potential, a lot of produce that will eventually, of course, create opportunities along the value chain. So I believe, we need to center on the farmer, and this is something we've done, quite well and we've been working with Agra to do that. We set up, we designed and developed a platform that is, the platform for farmers, with the objective to digitize the input value chain, because input is usually subsidized by government. And on this platform, we have over 1 million farmers registered with a lot of data, who these people are, their ID, the plot of land, what they farm, what seeds they use, etc. A lot of information. And this is, I think, a good foundation for many other stakeholders to support if we are able to have a sort of, integration layer on top of that database to tell insurance companies, you want to offer crop insurance, you can do this through the platform. Banks, you want to offer small loans, you can do this through the platform. The government, we want to provide advice to this farmer, you can do it through this platform. So we've built something that we believe is powerful to support the farmer. And we are really looking at it again as if we're farmers, as a farmer, what do you need? The farmer will tell you all these things that are in this report. I need a market, I need seeds, I need fertilizers, I need the right practices. I need to understand, my soil and what should be required for me to improve my productivity. So as a farmer, what do we need? And then we build, I think, a platform around that. I believe if we can all work in that direction, we'll be able to unleash a lot of potential in the agriculture sector. And when I think about COVID, it again, as I was saying, it has just exacerbated all trends that we all knew. For us in Rwanda, agriculture and the food systems in general were an essential sector. So we are actually coming back to the basics. What is essential? We can talk, we can have conferences, we can be able to work remotely, but we all need to eat. We want to feed our people. So this is absolutely essential for us. And I believe that this crisis will unleash, a lot of ideas with entrepreneurs. They'll be inspired to solve many of these shortages and these issues. And our role, I think, as bankers, as policymakers, as development partners, will be to create an enabling environment for these entrepreneurs of the post-COVID era to get the right business environments to produce and to flourish. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Diana. I really identify with your recommendations. I mean, just having a visibility of smallholder farmers on a digital, platform would surely, drive investment. So one of the other key, priorities that really came out there were issues of infrastructure, were issues of, policy. And Ndindi, I would just like to hear from you, especially given your experience both in development and in the private sector. Of course, we know that government is a big player and a big investor in agriculture. Development, partners are also big investors in the sector. What should governments and development, partners be doing to actually support the private sector?
Thank you very much. So from my lens with Sahel Consulting, we currently actively engage with government, and we recognize that we need enabling policy environment. So it's a combination of policy environment at the federal level and at the regional level that fosters trade within the country, inter-Africa trade that eases barriers to logistics, which I'm sure Ayodeji understands, with the cost of transportation being so high linked to the limited feeder roads, the high cost of energy, the challenges we face just with the operating environment in many of our countries, and then the flip-flopping of policies. We need consistent policies that favor local markets, that create incentives for backward integration, and actually reward companies that do invest in local communities and local sourcing and rural sourcing. So I think it's a broad spectrum of approaches, but what COVID has taught us more than ever before is that working in silos is no longer viable. And that if you're going to be in agriculture and food, you need to embrace policies and policymakers in finance, in climate, in science and technology, in health and nutrition, in gender. And so that we really need all policymakers across the board to work together holistically to create an ecosystem solution that drives change. Now, from my Ace Foods perspective, what we've also seen is the critical role of private sector to innovate, to invest in creating affordable food that's available for the most vulnerable people, because Africans have to feed themselves. And COVID-19, with closures in other countries, have also reinforced local demand, but many of our private companies are stepping up to fill this demand by innovating with new products and new services that will meet the needs of the people. And then finally, with Nourishing Africa, the third hat I wear, we've seen how powerful it is to create ecosystems of partnerships, because many entrepreneurs are isolated. Entrepreneurs in Ghana don't know entrepreneurs in Nigeria or Togo or Benin Republic or Ghana, and the power of sharing knowledge, best practices, but also working together to build our capacity as entrepreneurs to really unlock the opportunities within our ecosystem. So I'm seeing so much excitement in the landscape, and I think this is a unique opportunity for us to really position ourselves to transform this landscape and ensure that when future shocks arise, we're better prepared, we're better equipped, and that we don't feel the shocks as much as we have with the COVID-19 shock.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for those, comments, Didi, and, you're really spot on. I mean, we really need to look at the different, perspectives of engaging the private sector. So I know we are running out of time, but, I had asked, Wambui just to bring back the top 10, priorities. And I just want to go back to my panelists, we are now looking at the top 10, priorities. And as Wambui said, next year, and we do hope that our funding, partners and other partners will actually come together and work with Agra and, KPMG to ensure we do another survey in 2021. Diana, as you look at these top 10, priorities, how are we going to move forward? Yeah.
So when I look at these top 10 priorities, the ones that speak to me are obviously deliver catalytic finance and increase productivity of smallholder farms. And I think these go together. If you're able to get the right type of finance for farmers, for smallholder farmers, we'll be able to increase productivity. And eventually this will, it will have spillover effect across the value chain up to, value addition, processing, trade, logistics, etc. So this I believe is absolutely critical. And we, as Bank of Kigali, are working precisely to do that. And we are working with the government and with other stakeholders, including Agra, to do precisely that. And we hope that in a year or two, it won't be just a talk. It will be, we'll be showing some numbers, and we'll be, showing some numbers and put them on the table. Thank you.
We surely do look forward to being able not only to report the priorities, but also progress that we have made. Ayodeji, any last remarks on these top 10, priorities? Are we missing anything? What role do you see FX, playing across these 10, priorities?
Yeah, I pitched my tent today with Diane. I go with the money today. Critically, I think what the biggest thing for us in the year to come is our capacity to actually unlock financing from the capital market. So in building FX, we're very deliberate to first build on the strength and the integrity of storage and the warehouse receipt system. Now we've gotten to a point where, especially with the yield curve that we have in the country today, we actually can raise commercial papers and hopefully bonds in a few years to come for agribusinesses to finance their growth. That will be the biggest achievement for us in the coming year.
Well, thank you so much for that. So Didi, we are looking at the 10 key priorities here. I'm just wondering who should be seeing this, who should we be sharing these key issues so that we can begin to see some action on them?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I'd actually pitch my tent, one priority that's not here, which is around capacity. I think that if many entrepreneurs, if you gave them funding, would misuse it because they're actually not ready for financing. And so how do we provide the capacity, the support, especially around value addition and productivity gain, if we don't unlock the extension services and build agribusiness training and education across the continent? So that's where I'm pitching my tent. And in terms of who needs to see this, definitely I think we need policymakers to see it. We need funders and development partners to see it. But we need to ensure that we group a lot of these items. I see a lot of overlaps in these 10 priorities. I would actually, I'm putting my consulting mind and I'd group a lot of them. And I'd also direct them. Some are very much focused on the granular smallholder level, but then we also need catalytic financing for the SMEs and the larger companies. And we need to create incentives for value chain actors to collaborate. And we need to measure collaboration because for me, if you don't compel people to collaborate, they'll continue to work in silos. So policymakers, development partners, and we need actors at the federal, state, and local levels to really engage, because at the end of the day, agriculture cuts across the entire ecosystem. And I would love to see what we can do with Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement, Continental Trade Agreement, and how we can track the amount of agri-produce that's moving across our continent. I would love to challenge KPMG and Agra to keep an eye on the number of SMEs that are starting to trade, leveraging those platforms in 2021.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This panel has made my afternoon, you've made my work very, 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 very easy. Thank you for your deep experience, your insights, and thank you to the KPMG team for sharing this. As we said, we will be sharing with you the link on where to download this particular report, and we really want to thank the U.S. Agency for International Development for funding this particular report, and to all our PIATA partners, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Federal Ministry for Germany, the Rockefeller Foundation, and UK Aid. So with that, my job is done this afternoon. I would like to hand over to Vanessa and to Benson to do the official launch of the report. We were expecting the president of Agra, and we will just check if she's available, but I would like to hand over to Vanessa. I will come back and give some closing remarks. Over to you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much. And I actually would like to take a minute and share some of the great questions that have been coming through. And maybe Wambu, you can put the slide back with the web links where the reports can be downloaded. Some of the questions and comments coming through have highlighted the opportunity and the challenges of regional trade, which didn't show up in the priorities as much. And so that's one area for further review. Another area, as Ndidi mentioned, is on processing and capacity for food processing, and which didn't necessarily also get highlighted as much. One question was submitted about the few responses from certain countries. Some countries were very, very active and responded, and of others a very thin response from I think Mali, Senegal, Mozambique, Niger. So maybe next year we need to translate into French as well to make this a bit more accessible. So we can do that, and we should. And then there are also some inputs coming through, particularly on these finance questions. And as Ndidi said, I think we can bundle them a bit more and disaggregate by types of organizations. Finally, one comment which I think is really critical and came out in the priorities, which is about the government leadership and the government spend and engagement, of course, throughout Africa, which we know is absolutely essential to provide the environment and enable the private sector really to to respond. And this comes through in the COVID response question in the report. And I think we can also continue to dig deeper, specifically what the private sector wants to and needs to have as support from each government in each country. So as we move forward, there's a lot of additional insight inside of the report. I hope you're all downloading it viciously and ferociously, consuming this information. We're very eager to come back and report on progress as we go forward, and hopefully see an evolution and in this really phenomenal partnership, engaging and reviewing and capturing the voice of 182 private sector companies who went through all 70 questions from Wambui and her team at KPMG. So a huge congratulations, much appreciation, and Benson, do you want to join me in the official launch? And I think we can distribute through all of our social media channels the links for everyone to be able to download and engage in this conversation. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, I join you, Vanessa, and I want to just echo the sentiment. Thank you very much to Wambui, Anis Wambui, and the entire team, KPMG, the team at Agra. I think I'm very proud of what has been achieved, and I want to commit that we are going to follow through. Our partnership with Agra will continue, and we'll see through the recommendations and how we can participate in transforming agriculture across the continent. So thank you very much all. The report is available.
So that report is now officially launched. I really, and I've just posted in the chat. Also the Agra link where, yes. Congratulations to, to you both. So
there is.
Yes, that's a lovely report and very good work. So I think just in terms of reflections as we close this particular event, when both Agra and KPMG set out, we really wanted to hear what is keeping the CEOs awake. And I do believe that we have brought out the key issues that are keeping the CEOs awake, and our business leaders on this call today, Diane, Ayodeji, and Didi, have confirmed that indeed those issues that came out of that, and of course even Benson articulated those issues quite clearly. And Vanessa, I'm intentionally looking at the private sector here, that they have really confirmed that the key issues that are keeping them awake are the issues that are within the report. So the other thing that we had also set out to do is to try and inform how development partners and government can engage with the private sector. So through the priorities, through some of the key insights that have come out, there are a number of issues there. Of course, productivity of the smallholder farmers. I was actually shocked when I saw that, but indeed, it seems to be quite high up there. So it just means even for the inclusive agriculture transformation, there's quite a lot of work that still needs to be done to improve the productivity across all value chains of our smallholder farmers. So there's quite a bit of work that we really need to invest in there. And I think the call here is for government and development partners to really develop key strategies on how to engage with the private sector. So finally, the other objective that when we set out was to actually make this an annual report. So we will be engaging with our partners, of course, also engaging with KPMG and our PIATA partners, but of course also with the private sector, because indeed we really need to work together to ensure that on an annual basis we are able to produce this particular report. So you will be hearing from us in terms of how do we finance and ensure that we are able to carry out this particular survey on an annual basis. So I really want to thank all of you for the time you have taken. It's been a fantastic 1 hour. It's been quite engaging. And with us, Vanessa, our Vice President, if you could give a vote of thanks and declare the webinar closed.
Thank you to everybody, and fantastic panel, and really wonderful insights, excellent work on all around And this is a living document, and we expect to go forward and see progress in the coming years. So really wonderful. Thank you all. Thank you again. Congratulations. And thanks to all of our great participants. We had 265 participants from across Africa, from very small businesses to tiny little one-person businesses to multinationals who have joined us and sent input, as well as all of the partners in the ecosystem contributing, our Piata partners and other nonprofits that we work very, very closely with. And of course, again, we appreciate our engagement with KPMG and look forward to our next ventures together. Thank you all so much, and I officially close the launch and invite everyone to start reading up.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, and we're closing, I think, now.